Finding love is supposed to be deeply human, but today, millions of us hand that responsibility over to apps we barely understand. We swipe endlessly, chasing the feeling that the right person is always one profile away. One more swipe, one more match, one more tiny hint of hope. From Tinder's ELO scoring system, to Hinge's stable matching algorithm, to the rise of full-on AI matchmakers, these systems have become some of the most important algorithms affecting our daily lives. But almost no one today knows what's happening behind the scenes. Hi, I'm Dan. I work on large-scale recommender systems at Big Tech, and today I want to explain how dating algorithms actually work, using Hinge as a case study. And we'll also go into how modern breakthroughs in AI are reshaping the matchmaking and dating landscape. Let's get into it. To really understand why today's dating algorithms look the way they do, we have to go back to the beginning. While online dating existed in some form or another since the 1960s, it remained so incredibly niche until the start of the 21st century, when with the rise of the internet, we started to see online matchmaking websites like Match.com and eHarmony. At the time, the most popular algorithms were psychology-based compatibility questionnaires, such as eHarmony's 29 Dimensions of Compatibility. This was a long, detailed questionnaire aimed at finding out as much information about you and pairing up people who fit your psychological profile. Match.com took a more engineering-driven approach. Their early algorithm essentially computed a weighted average of different user traits, where engineers manually set the weights to traits like interests, psychological profile, or lifestyle based on what those engineers felt were more important to a final score. Despite these innovations, online dating still wasn't truly mainstream during this time. That was until 2012, when Tinder exploded onto the scene. With its simple app-based interface and dynamic scoring system that would define much of online dating in the coming decade. With its intuitive swipe-based algorithm and its very low barrier to profile creation, Tinder quickly went viral, garnering millions of signups, particularly among millennials. Most surprisingly about Tinder was its extremely simple matching algorithm, a concept borrowed from chess, the ELO scoring system. ELO system worked like this. You were shown profiles with a similar score to yours. If you liked someone and they liked you back, your score went up. If they didn't, your score went down. From a user perspective, this system could be problematic, but we'll get into that later. For Tinder, however, it was brilliant. Instead of carefully crafted, questionnaire-based matching, Tinder introduced a high-velocity feedback loop, where millions of people were constantly swiping, generating a massive fire hose of behavioral data for the company. All this right as machine learning was taking off. By the early 2010s, machine learning and deep learning was being adopted by the tech industry, and dating apps quickly followed suit. For dating apps, machine learning models could be trained on user data to better predict who a user will swipe on or who they will match with. Between this and the genius data collection mechanism that Tinder had, and the profit potential from offering paid subscriptions, many of Tinder's competitors, like Hinge and Bumble, came onto the scene. And with enough users and data, these companies, including Tinder, which reportedly abandoned its ELO system in favor of a more sophisticated machine learning approach, shifted towards predictive recommendation systems, similar to what YouTube, Netflix, or TikTok use. And with that, dating apps were no longer survey engines or simple swipe toys. They were full-on recommender systems. Today, 53% of adults under 30 have used a dating app, and roughly 1 in 5 partnered young adults actually met their significant other on one. In fact, these apps are now the #1 way couples meet in the US. In 2024 alone, an estimated 380 million people globally were active on these platforms. And despite reports of dating app fatigue, the industry is still incredibly lucrative, generating over $6 billion a year. That's why you see dozens of new competitors constantly hitting the market, each promising to finally fix the broken experience of their predecessors. Quick question for you all. Which dating apps have you tried? And more importantly, did you feel like the algorithm was working for you or against you? Let me know in the comments down below. So given how massive the industry is, it's wild that we don't exactly know how these apps work. So let's dive in. We'll use Hinge, which has one of the more sophisticated dating algorithms, as our case study to break down what is actually happening under the hood. On the surface, the goal of any dating algorithm should seem obvious. Show the user profiles they're likely to match with, go on a date with, and ideally, end up getting into a long-term relationship with. However, for many apps, the incentives for the developers might not always be aligned with doing what's best for their users. What do I mean by this? You see, many apps have monthly paid subscriptions, with each subscription promising more swipes, higher profile visibility, and possibly even more matches. However, as soon as a user actually ends up getting into a committed relationship from using the app, they are now incentivized to cancel their subscription service. So this win for the user comes at a cost to the app, as it's now losing a paying customer. This, of course, has led to some people accusing these apps of not optimizing for the user's best interests, but for maximizing revenue, swipes, and time spent on the app. But with that caveat out of the way, let's get back to Hinge, which markets itself as the app designed to be deleted, and does have several features which are lacking in many of its competitors, like enforcing high-profile quality, showing you your like queue, and having a very sophisticated algorithm and pretty interface. It's not perfect, but it is fair to assume that Hinge is genuinely trying to optimize for getting users on dates and making meaningful connections. With that in mind, let's look at how the algorithm actually works. Dating apps like Hinge rely on recommendation algorithms, similar to how apps like YouTube, Netflix, or TikTok recommend content. The difference is, of course, on those sites, recommendations only go one way. On YouTube, if you like or watch a video, you won't have to worry about it liking or watching you back. However, for dating apps, recommendations are a two-way street, where you're both the user and the content being recommended to others. So it's not enough for you to like another profile. That profile also has to like you back. This raises the question: how does Hinge match two people whose preferences both matter? The answer comes from a simple yet elegant algorithm from 1962, the Gale-Shapley Algorithm, also known as the stable marriage algorithm. Here's how it works in simple terms. Imagine a room with 5 men and 5 women, each looking for a heterosexual partner. Everyone creates a ranked list of preferences. The goal is to produce pairings where no unstable matches, meaning no two people would prefer each other over the partners they ended up with, exist. The algorithm divides people into 2 groups: proposers and proposees. In our example, the men will be the proposers and the women the proposees, but either side can be the ones proposing and the algorithm will still work. The algorithm runs as follows. The men wait in line. The man at the front of the line starts on the first person on his list and proposes to that person. If the woman being proposed to hasn't matched, the two pair up. If the proposee has already been matched but prefers the new proposer, they switch partners, and the man she originally was with will go to the back of the line. If the proposee prefers their current partner, then they will reject the proposal. Either way, the proposer crosses that name off their list, and if rejected, goes to the back of the line. This continues until everyone is matched. The result? The proposing group gets its best possible matches. The proposee group gets matches that are stable, but not necessarily optimal for them. If you want to get a better feel for the algorithm, there are a lot of great videos that go over how this works in more detail. I'll be linking one of them in the description. Fun fact, this algorithm is used in a wide variety of other domains, including matching medical students with residency programs in the US. But now the big question, how does Hinge get your list of preferences in the first place? Well, imagine if Hinge asked each of its users to manually rank all the other users on the platform. That would give a perfect preference list for Gale-Shapley. That would also be insane. So instead, Hinge uses recommender systems to estimate your preference list for you. Hinge builds out your ranking list by 1. First applying all the filters you set, like age, distance, religion, and of course gender, to narrow millions of profiles down to a manageable candidate pool. 2. Extracting the following signals from both your profiles and the ones in the candidate pool. Explicit signals: your interests, your prompts, your photos, your job, your education, and your lifestyle info. And implicit signals. These are the behaviors that the system learns from, such as who you liked, who liked you, your match history, messaging behavior, time spent on certain profiles, and how selective you've been. These signals are fed into deep learning models, such as collaborative filtering networks, embedding models, and multi-layer ranking systems. These models predict which profiles you would rank the highest if you had to sort them yourself. This results in your personalized ranked list, the closest thing to a preference order. Finally, Hinge runs a modified version of the Gale-Shapley algorithm on your predicted lists, ensuring that the profiles you see are high on your list and that you are reasonably high on their list. So in summary, the algorithm is really doing 2 things. 1, predicting attraction, and 2, ensuring mutual interests via stable matching. By the way, if you're curious to learn more about how recommender systems work, I made a whole video on the topic using YouTube as a case study. So feel free to check it out if you're curious to learn more. Although dating apps do have their benefit, after all, hundreds of thousands of people have ended up meeting their spouse on apps like Hinge, Coffee Meets Bagel, and even Tinder during its ELO score era. These apps do come with some serious side effects for both the user and society as a whole. The first problem is that these apps can end up gamifying the dating experience. Swiping is designed to feel quick, rewarding, and a little addictive, almost like a slot machine. Every swipe has the possibility of a match, and that small burst of anticipation keeps people coming back. This paired with the monetary incentive for developers to keep users on their apps, and we start to see a pattern where people are given just enough matches to keep them using the app, but not enough to find the right person. These apps can also amplify some of the worst parts of modern dating, especially for men and women looking to get into heterosexual relationships. For women, a popular internet analogy describes the average experience to that of drowning in the ocean. Even a very simple, unoptimized profile can receive a flood of likes and messages. The real challenge becomes sifting through all of it, trying to figure out which profiles represent a genuine match and which are just low effort. I've heard many women describe this as like looking for a needle in a haystack, which can quickly lead to decision fatigue and burnout. For men, the experience is almost the opposite, often being compared to collapsing from dehydration on dry land. Most men swipe on way more profiles than they actually match with, and many receive little to no inbound interest. For young men in particular, this mismatch can lead to feelings of hopelessness and anxiety, and these problems feed into each other. When men get fewer matches, they compensate by swiping more broadly, which then increases the volume of likes that women receive, increasing the amount of profiles that they have to filter through. Meanwhile, the algorithm responds in a predictable way. The majority of likes, matches, and visibility ends up concentrated in a small percentage of profiles. Studies and independent data analysis suggest that the top 10% of male profiles receive the majority of engagement, while the bottom 50% receive little to none. If you'd like to learn more, this video by Memeable Data does a great job illustrating this phenomenon. Highly recommend checking it out. But honestly, one of the most fundamental issues with dating apps is the sheer shallowness of the experience. Even on Hinge, which genuinely tries to encourage depth and thoughtful prompts, many profiles still end up as a collection of sarcastic one-liners, quirky remarks, and curated aesthetics. When I used Hinge a few years back, I found that making my profile more casual and less serious actually increased the number of matches I got. That says something about what the system rewards. Most profiles don't list a person's core values, personality traits, behaviors, or much indication of who they truly are. Instead, what you often get is a polished persona, something more akin to a mini Instagram brand than a window into someone's actual character. Which brings us to the core of why I think so many people are put off by these apps. There is something to be said about taking a core part of the human experience, finding love and companionship, and turning it into an experience more akin to that of social media growth hacking or conversion funnel optimization. The difference, of course, is that no one deserves to have their hot takes go viral on Twitter/X. But given a reasonable amount of effort, everyone deserves a fair shot at finding love. And for people struggling to meet others in real life, being bad at these apps or feeling burnt out from them can be a major disadvantage. So what can we do about this? Well, trends are showing many people quitting the apps and moving on to meeting people in real life. Does this mean that dating apps are dead? No, but it does mean that the trend is shifting away from purely swipe-based apps to something more akin to AI matchmaking. Matchmaking is, of course, nothing new. For most of human history, friends, family, and community networks were how people met. But in the last few decades, outside of a few cultural contexts, matchmaking became niche, mostly because it was expensive, time-consuming, and hard to scale. But the rise of LLMs, combined with the burnout many people have been feeling with endless swiping, has brought back matchmaking into the spotlight. And with that, new apps are popping up that blend the old school ideas of introductions with the modern capabilities of AI. For example, apps like Loop built out a dating-based social network where you can meet friends of friends, either by introductions from your friends or by searching manually from your side. Other apps have made use of hybrid AI human matchmaking strategies, where human matchmakers can use AI tools to find matches for you. For example, Stitch advertises itself as one of those apps. And we're also starting to see the rise of AI dating coaches. Many new apps like YourMove.ai now give users personalized feedback, suggesting profile improvements or when to loosen overly strict preferences. Will these AI matchmaking systems truly replace dating apps? It's too early to say, but demand is clearly shifting towards systems that feel more intentional, more curated, and less like slot machines. If you're on your own journey to find love, I genuinely wish you the best, both online and offline. But if you made it this far in the video, and you also happen to be on a journey to learn more about the world of machine learning, recommender systems, and the tech industry as a whole, then I'd love it if you subscribed. And if anything from this video didn't make sense to you, then do leave a comment down below. I'll answer every single one of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.